I've been watching Gina B. Silkworks videos on making thread-wrapped buttons, Yorkshire buttons, Dorset buttons, and I've always wanted to try them. And I saw a video of a lady using a little cardboard loom that she had made to make the Yorkshire button. And this is a number 10 crochet thread, and that's what I used to make this one. It came out a little bit fatter and thicker than I wanted because I stuffed it, and I'd never made one of these before, so I do want to use them on my slow stitching project. So I think next time I won't stuff the button. I don't want to repeat a lot of stuff that I've covered under teneriffe lace. We had a lace class at our church, and I had a few short videos showing how to do the teneriffe lace, and we made our own lace pillows. This is the loom that we used to make the lace, and all I did was cut up some of those floor mats, and I doubled it so that I would get a double thickness so that my pins wouldn't poke through all the way to the other side. And this really comes in handy for making lace. But for the Yorkshire button, I wanted to give it a try instead of making a little cardboard loom, and I really like working with the pins. So I used one of my little laminated spokes here that I had made for teneriffe lace, and on the video she used 12 spokes, and so the one that I have printed up here is 36 spokes, and I do have that included. You go to a certain website, I can't remember it right now, but it is in one of my videos, and you go and you print up your own circle graph paper, and you just tell it how many spokes you want, and I laminated mine so I could use it a lot of times until it wears out. So since this is 36 spokes, for this button I chose this blue line right here because I wasn't sure how big the button was going to come out, but I'm sure that because of the diameter of the button, and we do gather it up on the bottom just like you would a fabric yo-yo, so you're going to need twice the diameter for the finished product, and that's my theory anyway. So I'm just going to put 12 pins in and at slightly an angle. And so the way my graph paper works here is where every intersection of these circles is to one of these spokes, that's where my pin goes in. So I just angle them in there. So I'm going to go ahead and put 12 pins in that blue circle there. Okay, I don't want this video to get too long, so as far as the weaving part of it, I may show a couple of stitches of it. But you can go and watch her video. It's a very good video with her little cardboard loom, and I will try my best to remember to put the link. But I've got my little ball of yarn in a container here, and I'm going to poke through, and I've already used this hole so many times that my needle goes through pretty easily, so if I hit it right every time. And so I'll pull my tail through to the back and remove the needle. That way I don't have to hold on to it. You'll see on her video she's holding on to that thread the whole time that she's weaving, and that would really make my hands tired. So I've got a big large pin here on the end of my little pillow, and I'm going to wrap that thread around there and push the pin down, and I can tug on this and make sure it's firm. Alright, so this is pretty similar to what we've done with the cartwheel spreading the web for the teneriffe lace. So we're going to call this 12 o'clock, and I'm going to go clockwise. I'm going to wrap around that pin and the next one, and then I'm going to always cross across the center, so wherever that is, that's where I'm crossing, and so that's the pin right there that I need to go around, and I'm still wrapping clockwise. So I'm wrapping around the pins clockwise. So I'm going to cross back over to the center, and whatever pin that I'm across from, I'm going to go around that one and the next one. And you can turn your loom. So I'm going to cross through the center, and that's the pins that I need to go around. And I'm still doing a motion in a clockwise manner. So I'm going to cross straight across. And so you'll see there's a gap here between, and it looks like I've skipped one. No, I hadn't got there yet. So you should have a gap between the one you did before and the next one. So I'm going to go straight across, so that tells me which pin. So now I'm starting to close those gaps. So I'm going straight across, and then this pin, straight across, and these two pins, straight across, two pins, straight across, wrap, two pins, and so on until all of the gaps are filled, which I think I have made it. So I'm going to put this back to the 12, where the 12 o'clock is straight up here. So I need to let go of this so I can measure out some thread to cut. So I'm just going to use one of these pins that I have in the end here. I keep a few handy so that I can anchor some threads. I'm not going to cut the thread. I'm just going to measure out enough that where I don't get tangled. A little bit more than a yard, because it's with this method it's really easy to add thread when you run out. And she shows her method in the video, and I do something very similar, except for I use pins to anchor. So I may cut the thread after a while and show you how you add thread. So now I'm ready to start weaving. I need to go ahead and push my pins in, and like 99% of the time I get ready to start weaving and I forget to push my pins in. So the pins will be out of your way, and they will anchor the threads that we have wrapped around them. And then when we're done, all we have to do is pull the pins out so we can release our work. Alright, so let me get my needle threaded with this cut length that I have, and I'll come right back. I probably should start with short thread just to show you, because it can get aggravating on a video when the yarn keeps getting tangled up. But so that one's out of the way. I don't have to hang on to it. So I'm going to come straight back up to 12 o'clock up here. And I want to go under the two bars that are around that pin, just around those two like that, and bring the thread through. I'm doing this from memory. I've only watched her video once, but since I'm used to teneriffe lace, I think I have it down. And then I was successful with this one, so I know it's probably the right way to do it. If not, you can watch other videos. So always pull tight after you have gone around one of the bars. So from now on, you're going to look for where this yarn is coming out, or this thread is coming out, and you're going to pass your needle under the bar to the spoke to the right and to the left of that. So here's my thread coming out here. I'm going to go under the right one and the left one that's on either side of that one. And that's all you do, all the way around. And it starts building up this spiral, and it makes these ridges because you're always doing a little back step. And what I mean by that is, you see where this thread is coming up through there? It's going to make a little back step and wrap around this spoke here, and that makes the ridge. So if you have to lay your work down, you can always come back and see where that thread's coming out, and you're going under this pair and that pair. So it's really 4 threads, but it's 2 spokes. And you should not be going through a loop like this, because then you'll create a knot. All your yarn should be out of the way towards you, so that you don't make another knot. That would be like a teneriffe lace knot. It wouldn't be appropriate for this project. So I'm going to do one more pair. So there's my thread coming out between those 2 spokes. I'm going to put my needle in from right to left underneath both pairs and pull tight. So I'm going to go around and around and around and around until I can hardly get my needle through the spokes. Whenever it gets uncomfortable, then you can quit. But I may cut my thread a little bit further on and come back and show you how you add thread if you run out, and that way you don't have to work with really long lengths. I like to have enough thread on my needle to get at least halfway through, because let me see if I can find the place where I added thread. I think it's right there. So once you gather up your button, most of that will be to the back. So I like to have enough thread on my needle to at least make it to where any mistakes I make or any time I have to add thread, it's going to be hidden underneath the button. Okay, so if I've run out of thread, this is where my needle last went through, and I leave enough of a tail to where I can anchor the tail next to the spoke. One of the spokes. It's got to line up with one of the spokes. So I'll just wrap it up and anchor it. Because what's going to happen is every time I come through here, I'm going to include that tail with that spoke until it has been anchored enough. So I've got another length of yarn or thread on my needle. So I'm going to go under the same two spokes that this thread went under last. That's just the way I've done it. I can't remember how the woman on the video did it, but this worked for me last time. So I'm going to go under and follow that same path and pull my needle till I've got a little bit of a tail left here. And I'm going to get another pin and anchor this tail along a different spoke, so that they don't end up getting wrapped around the same spoke and it won't be so obvious. But again, this is probably going to be gathered up underneath the button, so none of this is going to show. So I'm just going to kind of tuck that down. So now this thread is going to be included with that spoke and that one with that one. So if it doesn't take me too long to get around, I'll just leave the video running. So now I'm going to pretend like this is this thread here, because that's where that one left off. So here's my thread. So I'm going to grab all three strands here, the two that are for the spoke and that one that we just anchored there, and then I'm going to grab the next spoke. And I'm trying to do this on the table instead of holding it up like I normally do, so I'm going to make my excuses. Alright, I've got a long thread here, so I'm going to pull tight and then continue around. So here's where my new spot is. Just keep going around. I'll try to do it as quickly as possible. Without getting any thread tangles, I hope. It's always on video. If it's going to tangle, it's going to be when someone's watching you. I think she might have been using a little bit thicker thread, so I think you can really use anything. Just depends on what look you're going for, but this is what I use for my lace. So I'm getting close to that spot, so my thread's coming out right there. So now when I go through this spoke and this one, I'm going to include that thread and pull it down tight. So I'm going under that spoke and then under all three of those threads that are next to that pin. And try not to catch the other one. So when I pull that down tight, it's going to tidy it up. So now, from now on, I'm going to pretend like these are all one. And once I've wrapped it for a ways, then I can go ahead and cut it off. I don't have much further to go, so I just may leave it till almost the very end. So you can see I went under all three strands there and all three strands there, and I've effectively am anchoring it to the previous thread. So I'm going to keep going around till I can barely get my needle through the spokes, and then we'll be ready to take this off of the loom. Okay, my thread's getting really short. I could go a little farther. It is getting a little hard to get my needle in there, but at this point I can go ahead and unthread my needle because I think it's going to fall off anyway. And I can go ahead and take my pins out. Or you can do this gathering step while it's still on here. But it's easier, I think, if you take the pins out. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this from the loom. Okay, I've rethreaded my needle and I need to release this tail here so that I can pull this off. I can pull that tail right out of the center there. So it looks pretty just like it is. You can stop at any point when you're making your button and just make it a flower if you want to. And normally I would have gotten a little bit closer to the edge and these loops wouldn't be quite so big, but you're just going to go in and out all of the loops so we can gather this up with whatever tail you have left. And it also looks good on the other side, so either side can be the right side of your button. You just kind of make it go where you want it to. I believe you can use more spokes and these loops will be smaller, but this is what I saw demonstrated was 12 spokes. Let's see if I've made it all the way to the beginning. I'm going to go into that loop again and then just start pulling. You can put your finger in there. And what I did with the other one, the other button that I made, I had a bunch of embroidery thread clippings that I just threw in a little bowl and they made a little wad of yarn, and I stuffed those in the middle of my button and it worked out pretty good. But I'm not going to stuff this one, I just want to see what it looks like if you don't. So you can just gather that up as much as you want it to be, or maybe put a little bit less stuffing in there. And you can use this other tail that we started with to tie a knot. Now I'm going to leave mine there. It might not be enough to sew this button on with, but I'm just going to leave the tail there until I decide what I'm going to use the button for. So let's see what this looks like without being stuffed. And that's a nice little flat embellishment that I can use. I could take a needle and kind of straighten this out a little bit, but that kind of a flat button like that would look good on some of my slow stitching, whereas a big fat button like that might not be good for my purposes. But if I were to use it on a garment or something like this, you're going to want a fatter button. But this is a really neat idea. So I'm going to try to make some smaller ones, and in that case I would probably use one of these inner circles instead of the blue one. I might skip down to the black circle there, and that's it's about 1 inch in diameter, so it'll make a really small button. Just so you don't have to go watch one of my other videos, you can go to incompetech.com and click on their graph paper link right there. I use this all the time. You'll see it in a lot of my videos, quilting, whatever. This site is so great. So I'm going to go to the plain grids and I'm going to choose a circle grid. And you can tell it how big you want these squares to be, and this is where all your intersections are. So I'm just going to leave it at 1/4 inch. Sometimes I'll change it to 1/8 of an inch. You can say how many spokes. The pattern we used today was 12 spokes. You can experiment with that. You can tell it what color you want your lines to be. Let's just choose purple just for this idea here. And then once you've got everything set the way you want it, the size paper, then you can click download. And you can save it or you can open it. Depending on what your download settings are, it may go straight to a download folder. So it printed up all of my lines in purple. So where you can see the squares in the background. And so those squares will intersect with the spokes of this 360-degree circle. And so you can decide when you choose your squares how far apart those intersections are going to be. So anyway, you can choose any one of these circles as the place where you're going to put your pins, depending on how big you want your button to be. So print that up, and if you have a laminator or you know someone that has one, you just laminate it, and you can use it quite a bit before you have to throw it away. But you can just print it up every time you need it also, but the paper wears out pretty quick.